Come on by and have a bite at the CrossRoad Diner, the place where your spirit goes when it might be time to change direction. We talk to people from all walks of life about when they found their passion, their direction, and how they had the courage to take action. Hey everybody, welcome back to the CrossRoad Diner. I'm Steve McCurdy, your host. With me today is Dave Maldanado. Dave's a great friend of mine, and I directed Dave in my epically forgettable I Flunked Sunday school, and he stole most every scene he was in with his wonderful, quiet way. Dave's been in a lot of things that you've seen, Deepwater Horizon, I guess, is probably one of the biggest budget ones. But you got a couple that are in post right now, right?
Yeah. I've been lucky enough to work be an actual working actor for the last 10 years or so.
Tell people what that means, working actor. That's because not everybody's going to know your name.
Yeah. For me, it's just working on a regular basis, and which is extremely difficult to do.
Yeah.
From Houston,
Texas in particular. Yeah.
From the Southeast, it's a hard thing. I mean, you can do commercials, you can do corporate videos and commercials, indie film, all that good stuff. But to be a working actor in big budget productions, TV and film on a regular basis, to me, that's a working actor. I can pay my rent. I don't know if I'll pay my daughter's tuition to this school. That might be rough, but hey, I'm doing my part. I'm putting my my slice of the pie in there.
Yeah, one of your credits that I see is in post production right now is The Vanishings at Caddo Lake. Now that sounds like a really high-minded, intellectual piece that some folks might not pick up on. But I was raised about 45 miles west of the shores of Caddo Lake. On the shores of Caddo Lake is a little town called Uncertain, because you don't know if you're there or not. It's so. What can you tell? What can you release about that upcoming epic?
There was a lot of time that I was out there near Shreveport where I felt I was very uncertain. I didn't know where the hell I was. Right. Out in the swamp and out of the swamp, I didn't know where I was, but. I tell you what, man, it's a great script. M. Night Shyamalan is one of the producers. Wow. And he helped write the script. The production company, it's a fledgling production company, and they kind of got M. Night to kind of come on and add some cash and cachet, if you will.
Yeah, right.
And, the script is fascinating, and it's a lot like all of M. Night's stuff. It's supernatural, and you're not really sure what's going to happen next.
Naturally supernatural.
Is in it. Yes.
Yeah. Who else? Who did you say?
Dylan O'Brien.
Okay.
Who he and I worked on Deepwater Horizon together.
Yeah. Right.
So we got close on Deepwater, and then we got to work on that again, and we got to catch up and reconnect. And the script is really good. It's really and that's the thing for me is if the script is good, everything else should come together really well. Right. And I think we got something really special.
Well, and if it's not, it makes it almost impossible for it to come together.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, and
so
for some reason, really bad movies get made. Throw a bunch of money at them.
Yeah, no, it is kind of shocking, isn't it? I mean, given how much is spent on things, it's like, can we do something good? Is it that hard to do? So the CrossRoad Diner, as I have very loosely outlined to you, is that place where your spirit goes when you're kind of going, do I want to do this? Do I want to keep doing this? Do I want to do another thing? So, and we do things, we come to different parts of ourselves throughout our lives. So when you were a kid, I know you wanted to be a fireman at some point. I know you wanted to be a cop at some point. After that, when things settled down, what was, like when you were in high school and stuff, what was the vision?
I wanted to be an artist. I was a visual artist. I drew all the time.
Oh, yeah?
I was always drawing. And I took pride in it. And the older I got, the more impractical that idea became as a line of work. So, oh, well, you can draw, but what are you going to do when you go to college? I'm like, well, I'll major in art in college.
Where'd you grow up?
I'll major in.
Where did you grow up?
That?
Where did you grow up?
South Louisiana.
Okay.
New Iberia.
Okay. All right. Big artist country.
yeah. I mean,
every Cajun I know is an absolute artist with food or music or something.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
But professionally, were you, now are these doubts yours or are these coming from outside?
All me.
Yeah.
All me. A lot of self-imposed doubt. Everybody was encouraging. Hey, you draw so well. You should do this. And my whole thing was like, I'm either going to be an architect, because at the time you had to draw.
Yeah.
Not so much anymore.
Right.
Everything's done by computers. Or I was going to be a commercial artist. You still don't draw. It's all done by computers. You can draw with your computer. And I dabbled in acting in elementary school, in high school, and I had fun with it. But I never took it seriously, because that's not a job. It's not a job. There's no way that could be a job. So I majored in art in college at the University of Louisiana, the University of Louisiana.
Okay.
Lafayette. So, yeah, I did that for a while and figured out that, man, you really got to be really sharp with the computer if you're going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't. And I was taking acting classes, and I was like, man, maybe this is what I need to be doing, So that's what I did. And the thought of getting an agent and pursuing an agent and getting work that way was very foreign to me.
But it obviously evolved that way. And so at some point, what was the journey like?
Yeah. Well,
what did you get your degree in? I'm sorry. Let me get a little bit logical here. What did you get your degree in?
Well, like every logical person, I got it in general studies. Oh. And
I remember him in the battle of make a buck.
With a concentration in art and acting and theater and
okay.
I took a lot of great classes. It took me twice as long to get out of school as it took my wife. She was in engineering. She was like, boom, 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 I'm done. And I'm like, still in school, and she's out, and I'm like asking her dad if I could marry her. He's like, well, are you going to get out of school at some point? And he's like, yeah, of course. I'm gonna do that. But the more acting classes I took, I was like, okay, well, maybe I can do theater. Maybe I can move to Austin and pursue film there, and all these things were popping up in my head. And at that particular time, my wife got a job in Houston, and we moved, and that's where the grassroots of my theater, film, acting experience took root. It was in Houston, Texas. And once I got here, I got a little, day-to-day job at Michael's Framing, because I was framing my own art.
Sure.
I still wanted to do art. And I was taking every acting class I could. I was auditioning for every theater production, community theater, everything. The alley, the stages, everywhere. I was I was pursuing it. And that's what I tell people that are starting out. I was like, just do it, man. Do it. Community theater. I'm like, well, I don't know where to start. Well, look online and see who's has auditions.
Right.
Some little crappy theater in the corner of town, just
right.
Go do that.
Absolutely.
And that's what I did for years and years and years. And over that period of time, I got an agent, and I started making relationships with casting directors. But this is 20 years in the making, as far as like making relationships with casting directors in Dallas, Atlanta, Louisiana, Austin. It's taken me a long time,
But you have,
and that's the only way I know.
In addition to the relationship that you have with your agent, and that, are we talking, tell me the name of your agency.
Pastorini Bosby in Texas.
Right. And that's a team. I mean, I know you've got an agent that, is crazy mad in love with you, but there also they are a team who take different projects and they'll say, oh, send Dave for that. So you've got relationships with that agent and that agency. But then as you get as you get calls to these only 5 or 6 towns in the South where movies are filtered through, I would assume that you're making relationships with those casting directors and the folks that are on the filtering end of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so do they call for you? Do they call your agent and say, hey, you get Dave in here?
Yeah, I mean, it's crossed to that point to where I've got relationships now where the casting directors would rather just go through me.
Okay.
Which is very flattering. Although I would much rather my agent do all the business side of it. But
that's very that's got to be confident reinforcing to have the agent just call you.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just going in there and time after time. Lately, it's been via tape, but there have been many times that I've been in the room,
right.
And I did whatever I needed to do. Whether it was, I was so nervous I couldn't see straight, and I just performed. Sometimes I'll perform for half the audition, and I'll just lay an egg right there in the room. It'll be god awful. And they say, well, let's try this other role. And this other role will, okay, well, that's good. And I basically clutch victory out of the jaws of defeat. And it ends up that way. So the casting directors trust me, and they want to push for me, because a lot of the projects in our area, they're casting all the big roles out of LA and New York. Everything else they're filling in with the Southeast talent. And I am fortunate enough to have casting directors say, well, we got this guy. How about we move him up, to this role?
Right.
Like for Your Honor, the role that I did for Your Honor with Bryan Cranston, that wasn't meant for me, I don't think, in the beginning. But I read for it, and I was in the room, and I did a good job. And they were like, well, it's like, yeah, he's good, but we're looking for somebody else out of LA. And like, well, and that Megan Lewis has been my champion since the beginning, since I started getting any momentum in this business. She always fights for me. She's like, well, why not him? Why not him? Tell me why. Let's give him a chance at this. Right. And she's done that time and time again. And that's been, it's been incredible for my career.
But there's several elements to that, David. You got cast and you delivered, and you're not a prima donna. You show up, you're extremely, you're a nice, respectful guy that's easy to work with. I mean, there's a lot to be said for that. Yeah. And so, not only delivering as an actor, but you also just deliver as a person. And people like to work with people they know, like, and trust. And so, your investment in being a dependable guy who delivers the goods and also is kind of fun to have around when the coffee spills on the star, that's got something to be said for it. So what are you doing with art now? Oh dear! Should I not have asked?
Very little.
Is that because of time, or did you drift away?
I drifted away, and my son's doing it a lot now. Oh. And at times when I'm on the road, I will just sit down and start drawing, because when I'm alone and isolated, there's some kind of mental health things that I need I need to work out. So loneliness and isolation, and I have to keep myself busy. And there's only so many times you can, walk around the town, go to a museum, come back to your room, and watch some TV, talk to your family. There's an artistic outlet with drawing that I can just focus on that, and kind of get a hold of those toys in the attic that everybody has, and it helps. And I need to do it more often.
Right.
To be honest. Yeah.
So your son has an interest in art. You mentioned the daughter
yeah.
that you're trying to go steal some money so you can pay the tuition for her. What's her?
Right.
What are these ages?
My son is 15. He's playing linebacker at Klein Collins in spring, and very interested in art. His sister Livia is getting ready to start her freshman year at Texas A&M in engineering.
Hence the hat.
It's the hat, yeah. I love when people bring up the hat, like, "Hey, man, did you go there?" I'm like, "No, just my daughter, My favorite hat. I just like the hat, but I get into a lot of conversations. In fact, I went and saw ZZ Top while I was shooting in Oklahoma City,
okay.
And I'm pretty sure that's where I got COVID a few months ago. I mean, it was like, for lack of a better word, it was a white trash kind of free for all with.
Must have felt right at home.
Yes, absolutely, right at home. I had my hat on, and talked to a lot of people, shook a lot of hands, maybe gave a few hugs, and like a week later, I'm like, oh man, something's not right. And but I got into conversations with people. Oh, A&M, yeah, A&M, man. When did you go? Gig 'em. I'm like, no, it's my daughter. I have no allegiance to the school.
So what's her
whatsoever.
interest? What's she going to study? Do you think?
She's going to study engineering, mechanical, or chemical.
Okay. And how did that evolve for her?
Well, her mom's a chemical engineer, and she studied University of Southwestern Louisiana. She graduated in chemical engineering, and that's what her mom does now. What capacity? I'm not real sure. She changes jobs from time to time. So what? She's leading a group in a chemical engineering capacity, and but yeah, that's what she wants to do. She wants to do chemical engineering or mechanical, and yeah. So that's.
And how did your wife get interested in that? I mean, I know South Louisiana is oil all the time. Was she family? How did she get into chemical engineering?
Well, her dad, her brother, both graduated chemical engineering from Louisiana Lafayette, and she's always been. I think it's just you're really good at math and science. That's where you go, math and science, engineering. So that's what she did. She was really good at chemistry. She got me through chemistry in high school and college, which is why we ended up getting married. And then after I was, then I was like, well, I don't have any use for chemistry now. So I guess we got to figure out a different way to build on this relationship, because I don't really have any use for chemistry now. So, anyway, but yeah, that's the thing, man, chemistry and math. And I am, they come home and they have the homework, math, science.
And you go make a cheeseburger for them, right?
I go make a cheeseburger. They have a little bit of geography I can maybe help with, history, art. I'm the man. All
right. So
acting.
Because you're on sets with people who are on the same challenging journey that you are, my guess is you've heard a lot of stories. And some of those stories were real battles to get to where they are. And others were a lifelong passion that they just, whatever it takes, I'm going to get there. If it's community theater, if it's, there's something about storytelling that gets into people, I think. So, you got any of those that you can share about how a person kind of overcame, lack of encouragement and had to bootstrap it.
Yeah. Once I decided this is what I was going to do, I was like, okay, I'm going to be an actor. I really like this acting thing, man. I feel like I felt at home doing it. So I was like, okay, well, all I can think of was just do it and do it all the time and study it, take classes and do it, audition for plays, do play after play after play. And I got tired of my wife saying like, hey, you can be home tonight. It's like, no, I have rehearsal. Night after night. No, I have rehearsal. I was working. These are non-paying community theater shows. So I worked and eventually got an agent, and they got me a couple of gigs where I was like doing industrial kind of where I got paid, did a couple of commercials. And then we moved to Houston, and then I started tapping into the Austin and Dallas scene. We actually moved to Houston right before the big theater film boom in Louisiana.
Great time.
Which you would think is the worst time. But while I was here, I was cutting my teeth, doing theater, doing corporate videos, commercials, everything I could get my hands on while working a daytime job, part-time, and just, grinding. And I knew that's what I wanted to do. And over a long period of time, I just started. I always tell people it's a marathon. It's not a quick thing. You build relationships with people. I've built relationships with all these casting directors over the past 20 years, and they trust me now. But it's taking a long time to do that, Yeah. So I'm proud of it.
I would think you would be.
And I'm proud of the fact that I've developed kind of this audition technique and being on sets and kind of a lot of times I'm on set and I was like, God, I still don't know what the hell I'm doing. It's because there are so many technical aspects of being on a film set because everyone's different. Every set you go on, they're like, okay, we're going to do this and this and this. I'm like, okay, well, and you have to adapt. You have to adapt to different techniques, different people. And that, that's rough sometimes. And you have to kind of have some tough skin. And, it's been a long time coming, but I don't have any aspirations of breaking any sort of barrier of, okay, I'm going to finally do this. I'm going to finally make it big. It's like, I just want to work. And, I've seen people that make it big. They make it big 10 years ago, and there's nowhere they're nowhere to be seen. I would rather be consistent. That whole slow and steady wins the race thing. I want to work consistently.
Back in the day of the contract player, you got these movies that were made in the 30s and the 40s and early part of the 50s where you saw these character players in all these films, and they're passing away now, a lot of them, and they've got hundreds of credits for 4, 5, 7 minutes on screen, pivotal role at the right time. I can think of a dozen of them, but I can't think of anything that I would enjoy more than going in, having 15, 20 minutes on a film with a bunch of folks that I enjoy being around, and a character that I can kind of add something to, and then go home. It just that kind of acting would really appeal to me too. And so what is the role that you enjoyed finding and doing among the many that you've done? What's one that kind of comes to mind?
Well, gosh. There have been quite a few over the last. Well,
yeah, you got to scroll down your IMDb page, so you're already that guy.
Yeah. Hopefully, I'm that guy that you might know.
Yeah.
and luckily I can play lots of different character types. I can play the good cop, I can play the bad cop, I can play the criminal, that kind of thing. And when I did Deepwater Horizon, that was my first big role in a big movie. Up until then, I had done lots of big roles in small movies and lots of small roles in big movies. So it was like, that was the one where they had my name on the chair. I was like, okay, well, my name's on the chair. This is a lot of pressure. It was Peter Berg, and it was intense. It was a trial by fire with that guy, and that experience taught me so much. But I think when I get to work as a dad, and as a family man, I don't get to do it very often. Usually the one I'm playing cops all the time. I detectives and that sort of thing, and it's more of a not a caricature, but it's a
stock character.
It's not very fleshed.
Sort of a stock character, as they say.
Right. Yeah. And unfortunately, in our times now, it's a racist guy. It's especially if it's something that's from a period, a true story from a certain period. It's like, oh well, we gotta have some racist white guys. I'm like, okay, I'll help that. I'll help play that story. And I'll do it sincerely. But yeah, it's. I think when I did Queen Sugar, that was one of the guys that I could actually play, who was in an all-black cast, who was a good guy, a Caucasian guy who was trying to help people, and that was all he was. In the back of my wife and I's mind, we're like, oh, I hope he doesn't do something bad. It's like, is he going to turn into something? It's like, but he never did. He never did. He was always out to help Miss Vi and do the right thing. And, after you play a handful of bad cops and racist people, it's nice to play those that are actually out to do good. Absolutely.
So before we wrap up here, because we're kind of getting tight on time, I heard the best information or the best advice I ever heard for artists. This professor was asked about, there's not a ladder. There's not a way to go in at this level and work your way up. And he said, oh, no. He said, you've got a lot more control than you know. And he said, there's three things you can control, one thing that you can't, that affects success. First is persistence, which obviously you've done. You've kept at it. Mm-hmm. The second one is know people who can hire you. And certainly, at least your agent, but now all these other casting directors. The third is be delightful to work with. He said, you control all of those. Yeah. The fourth one does not guarantee success. All three of those, if you keep at it, will, if you do those things, eventually you'll have some success. The last one does not guarantee success, but it magnifies the success of the other, and that's talent. And you'd think it would be the first one, but it's not. And I'm sure you have worked with a lot of not so talented people that were incredibly successful, but probably because they had some of those other three characteristics. But as people that come to hear this podcast or to watch it on the video on YouTube, most of them are at some kind of crossroads of their own. And they're not getting a lot of external encouragement. They've got to reach down inside of them. And if you got anything that you could offer them other than just even your own example of your life and struggling for it, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah. It's all about the work.
Oh, that's good.
And so many people focus so much, not that social media and marketing and all that good stuff is not important. It's not very, I don't utilize it nearly as much as I should. But, if I'm going to make a post about some mundane, kind of meaningless thing on Instagram to kind of gain traction for my brand, I may as well just be sitting somewhere reading an acting book, or calling my agent and have a meeting, or getting together with some other actors and doing scenes. I think all that is much more important than the social media thing. I work regularly, and I don't, I don't associate that to social media at all. I don't have a following. I don't have a following. I have very few followers on all the social media.
Most are your friends, like
casting directors,
buddies like me. I would imagine. Yeah, and I'm not, other than this free gig, I'm not going to be able to get you a heck of a lot of work. I paid you once.
Yeah, you're not really pushing me over the edge, Steve.
Well, you had a really big role in a really little movie for me, and I appreciate it very, very much.
Yeah. But that's the thing for me.
Yeah,
it's the work.
Well, and I think that
the work is important.
That's a very important message, because that's where you. Now. And let me just add one quick question. Where do you get the feels? Is it on the set doing it? Is it in rehearsal? Is it watching it on the screen? Where is it that you get the fulfillment?
The fulfillment.
Well, you keep showing up and you keep doing it, and I get it. Part of it's a paycheck. But
yeah.
Money.
When I get a scene and I start to read through it, and I'm like, oh, I see what's happening here, and I connect. If I connect with the scene and the character, I'm like, okay, there's something rich and something that I can connect with that's important, that I can be passionate about, and then I give that over to the audition, and I let it go, and I forget about it. And I have people that tape me, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I've done my work. Let's do our thing. And half the time they'll say, hey, you booked this role. I'm like, great. Let's have that same energy when I'm on set, and I'll try to deliver that same. And it's going to be completely different. There's all kinds of different people. There's cameras. There's a different director. They might want a whole different take. But it's all about being present and being sincere, and not being pretentious, man. I hate that, and I've done it, and I hate that self. I hate that part of myself where you just let me try to do this because that's what they want. Like, no, just be true. Just be true in your audition and in your performance for the camera and for the director. And if they want something different, you stay in it and you try to give them a little nuance. And most of the time, if all that happens, the finished product that you see on the TV or the big screen.
Dave Maldanado, just be true. I like it. Thanks for joining us today at the CrossRoads Diner. Dave, thank you for giving us this time, and much good luck. I know that in a couple of weeks you're heading out to another set, and our thoughts are with you. Until next week, folks, we'll see you right back here at the CrossRoads Diner. Come on by and have a bite at the CrossRoad Diner, the place where your spirit goes when it might be time to change direction. We serve up specials in the diner Mondays and Thursdays, so give us a like and subscribe, and we will see you next time.